You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say. You can be whatever you feel like or choose to be. Really? What does Jehovah say about that? How much more detestable he must view the world's attempts to blur the lines of gender with false labeling. Again, really? Talk about an attempt to tear apart what Jehovah has made. So then even government agencies on a global scale are getting involved, and they are critical of anyone who does not adopt their warped view.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Indoctrination Station. I am your host, Coco Cowboy, and this is a new setup. I don't know if I should acknowledge that or not. Shem's still here, by the way. Look, he's right there. He's still not shy about this, but I don't think you can see him anymore, for the meantime at least. This is a bit of a new setup because I realize I really hate sitting down when I'm recording videos, so now you're gonna see my room and how messy it usually is. Today I want to talk about something that was actually viewer suggested. A couple days ago I put out a poll asking what video topics I should talk about next. Now I have a couple more votes, but my first the first person to interact on that post suggested this topic, and fitting that it's a trans video and we're getting the trans squeaks already. I wanted to talk about, because of this suggestion, I want to talk about what it's like to be queer and trans. Queer is pretty much an umbrella term that encompasses trans people as well as other identities. Queer is pretty much just a way of saying LGBT person nowadays. It's no longer an offensive term. Shem is really upset that he's not on camera. He's really, really mad about this. But I guess I can just do my entire video from down here if you don't mind. Oh, now you're gonna leave? Now he wants to rub on the microphone. I've talked in videos before about my personal coming out experience as a trans and now ex-Jehovah's Witness, but I haven't really touched on what it is like to be trans or to find out that you were trans and go through that process. And it might be good for some people coming out of the religion to get an idea of how people like this actually are, how trans people actually are, what being queer is actually about, and that it's not some scary thing that's unknowable or not understanding or not worthy of being understood. It's just part of human nature. I think I have a very limited but useful comparison here that could relate to Jehovah's Witnesses who are either still in or who have left. It's kind of like being anointed. For those of you not in the know, the anointed refers to those who believe that they are going to heaven, those who believe that they have the heavenly calling and they are not going to be on earth with the rest of us plebs. These are typically older people, and there have been far more than 144,000 like Jehovah's Witnesses claim they're supposed to be capped at. In fact, I believe that they used to count the people who partook at the memorial and therefore announced themselves as anointed, but they stopped counting because there were too many. But the point that I want to get across about the anointed and why I'm talking about them to begin with is how they knew as Jehovah's Witnesses that they were a part of the anointed class. And Watchtower's answer? They just knew. That is the answer. If you had this undying feeling in your heart that you were anointed, you could partake of the bread and the wine at the memorial. It was considered a private matter between you and Jehovah, and as far as I have experienced, most people didn't question it at all. I remember being a teenager in the hall during one memorial, and I saw an elder who was a good friend of mine. We went out in service a lot, and I saw him partake of the emblems, and his wife did not, which implies he believes he's going to heaven when Armageddon comes. and she believes that she's going to stay on Earth. So essentially they would be separated forever and ever. They would be separated and they would not be able to see each other anymore, which was so sad to me as a witness, because I could not imagine falling in love with someone and marrying them and living my life with them, and then, we believe together that we have this earthly hope or whatever, to live in paradise forever together. We have that chance together, and he comes to me and is like, actually, I'm part of the anointed. I believe I'm going to heaven. I can't imagine being in that mindset and believing, both those things. Like, that your partner is going to be going to heaven at the end and you're going to be stuck on earth without them. That sounds so sad. You having fun? We have fun here. Anyway, the point is, for the most part, the anointed were not to be questioned on their heavenly calling. I'm sure plenty, probably younger ones, have been questioned on their anointing if they came out as anointed, but as far as I know, when I was a witness, every anointed person I knew was treated with respect and was not asked about it. Discovering your trans... No, don't eat that! Discovering your trans is a lot like how they say being anointed is. You just kind of know. And that's the first thing, is just knowing. It's knowing that you are different. And not different in too significant of a way, but in your heart, in your soul, that there is something different about you. That you do not align the way that other people do with their bodies. Your soul is not lining up with the way that you are appearing to the world. And for me, it was seeing the brothers in the hall and their responsibilities, becoming ministerial servants, walking the mics, servicing the sound equipment. Free work for the organization. I understand that now, of course. But at the time, it was what I wanted to do. I felt in my soul that I was a brother. So I wanted to be doing the things that the brothers were doing, and I was not allowed to. And it made me upset. It made me very spiteful. It made me not even want to go to the meetings at all in the beginning, until I finally was forced to put on that mask and act feminine for my family's sake, because otherwise they would make my life a living hell. And at the time, I had no idea what being trans meant. I just knew that I was being treated differently than the way I felt that I should be treated. I wanted to wear suits, no matter how hot or uncomfortable they looked. I wanted to wear pants and a jacket to the Kingdom Hall. I really, really wanted to wear a tie. I would wear scarves and knickknacks around my neck all the time because I wanted to wear a tie, but I wasn't allowed to. It's a bit like an envious feeling, because you see so many other people doing things that you physically could be doing, and you have the desire and the want to do it. You're just straight up not allowed to because of how your genitalia looks. My knees were really starting to hurt me. I cannot just sit on the floor on my knees for forever the way that I did when I was 4. So one common misconception. I really hope that wasn't too bad. Jesus. One common misconception about trans people that both JWs and the world, or at least right-leaning people of the world, have about trans people, is that they are just very masculine women or very feminine men. And that's just not true. There's a lot of differences between a trans man and a masculine woman. Gender, sex, and attraction are all different things. They are related to each other, but they are not the same thing. And I used to scoff at this idea myself, because how could sex and gender be different? They're completely intertwined. And yes, they are intertwined. But that misconception comes around because most people, bless you, most people have their gender align with their sex. Sex is male or female. You can have cases of intersex or hermaphrodism. I think I'm saying that right. But for the most part, Your sexual characteristics are defined by your body's reproductive role. So do you make babies or do you help make babies? I.e., male and female. And of course, your reproductive organs will either be producing mostly estrogen, which will give you feminine characteristics and put you more in line with appearing to the world as a woman, or testosterone, which will give you masculine characteristics and will help you appear more as a man. So that's sex basics, and it's basically what's in your pants. Gender, however, is how you appear to the world. It's expressed in how you act, how you think, how you feel, how you interact with others. And somebody whose gender matches with their sexual characteristics is referred to as a cisgender person. Gender is an incredibly big, all-encompassing thing that cisgender people really don't think about all that often at all. And even though it affects us all, cisgender people have never been forced to face it head on with the feeling of, wait a second, this is wrong. This is not how I want to be treated. For a cis woman, whether she is open to expressing feminine characteristics or not, at the end of the day, she is comfortable with how she presents herself to the world, and she is comfortable with her body parts, and she likely wants to be referred to as a woman. This does not mean that she might not be uncomfortable with other aspects of her appearance, but for the most part, she is happy as a woman and she expresses that the way that she sees fit. For a trans man, it's not that easy. For a trans man, it is equivalent to the feeling that you have lived your entire life as a man and you have woken up one day as a woman. That is the feeling. That's not what I know happened. I know that I was born this way. That is the feeling, once I hit puberty at least, that something was being taken away from me, basically. That's the best way to describe it, is this feeling of being body swapped, and you want back in your old body, even though that was never your body to begin with. It's just this feeling that something is wrong and you need to fix it. And that feeling is called gender dysphoria. And it's really, really difficult to put this feeling to words for people who have never had to grapple with that part of themselves. But that's the best way that I can put it, is it's like being body swapped. And the best way that we have found so far to treat people who have gender dysphoria is to give them the tools and the resources to become more comfortable with their bodies. So that consists of non-medical and non-permanent solutions such as binders, which are designed to flatten the chest. I have one right here, in fact. It looks just like a sports bra, basically, but it flattens you out. It's comfortable, and as long as I'm not wearing it all day, I barely notice it's even there. And other non-medical solutions for trans men are things like packers, which can either be very simple and only consist of giving the appearance of a bulge, and this leads all the way into fully functional prosthetics that can be used for packing, urination, masturbation, and even penetration. For trans women, there are, of course, silicone breasts and tucking underwear to reduce the sight of a bulge. And of course, there are medical solutions available as well. Trans men can go on testosterone to give them more masculine features. Trans women can go on estrogen, but also go on medications to block testosterone's role in their body to further a feminine appearance. There are all sorts of surgical interventions as well. Trans women can, of course, get breast implants, although many of them can grow breasts just from estrogen itself. They can get a vaginoplasty, which I will not go into, and you should ask a trans woman if you're that curious. For trans men, there's this misconception that we all want a phalloplasty and a double mastectomy, and that's simply not true. There are other surgical methods available that are not nearly as invasive as a phalloplasty is. And a phalloplasty consists of taking a portion of skin, typically from the forearm, and fashioning it into a neopenis. I don't want this done. I don't want this done ever. So there you go. Not all trans men want this, clearly. A far less invasive option, but still not without its risks, and one that is not discussed often, not nearly as often as a phalloplasty. I did not even know it was an option until I started actually looking into the options. And that is called a metoidoplasty. Metoidoplasty. A metoidoplasty takes the existing genital tissue, aka the clitoris or female phallus, and after it has grown significantly from testosterone therapy, it seeks to further masculinize the appearance of the genitalia by wiring the urethra through it and reducing the extra skin surrounding it. So it basically just takes what's already there, what has already grown, and cleans it up. And you can get a metoidoplasty without the urethral rewiring as well. And it basically they just, I don't know. If you know what a vagina looks like, it takes the skin from around the clitoris. So basically, any trans person you meet will be completely different in their transitioning goals. It varies from person to person very significantly. So saying we all want this or we all want that is simply not true. I only want to be on testosterone. I do not want any surgery of any kind. So this misconception that all trans people are body modifiers who want to be chopped up is just ignorance. It shows a complete lack of understanding for the trans community and trans people as individuals. A good amount of trans people, whether or not by choice, will never undergo any surgery for transitioning. But many other not even physical aspects of gender are taken into account too for trans people, such as voice training to sound more masculine or feminine, practicing gestures, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you interact with others, changing your name, changing your gender marker. All of this comes as second nature to cisgender people, but it takes a combination of all of these for a trans person to be able to present themselves to the world in a way that makes them feel comfortable with themselves. And you may be thinking to yourself, why go through all of this trouble just to appear as the opposite gender? Is it really worth it? And why do you care so much what other people think? Well, number one, yes, it does matter. To someone who is completely comfortable in their gender identity, they don't think about any of these things because they don't have to. They just have it built in. They don't even realize what a massive impact it can have on your psyche to be constantly called and referred to as something or someone that you are not. Men and women treat each other very, very differently, whether they realize that they're doing it or not. And if you are a man in a woman's body, you do not want to be treated as a woman. It feels demeaning. And it's not that it's demeaning to be a woman, but it feels demeaning to be treated as a woman when you are not one. Just as for a trans woman, it would feel demeaning to be referred to as a man. It just feels wrong. Transitioning is not some egotistical thing that you just do when you don't want to be like everybody else. It's quite the opposite, actually. You want to be treated like everybody else, and you're not, and that's the problem. I just want to be treated as a man. And when I'm out and about, I can tell very quickly when people view me either as a woman or as a man. When I am passing as a male, people ignore me, and I love it. I live in the city, so I have mild interactions with people every single day. And there's an extreme subtlety, and unless you're experiencing it firsthand, you will not realize it at all. But there's an extremely subtle difference in every single interaction when you know you're being perceived as a male. And all I can say to describe that feeling when I'm picking up on it, that others are seeing me the way that I want to be seen, is peace. Peace and freedom to be myself and to speak my mind, to not be afraid. And I feel good. I feel comfortable. I feel normal. I can go outside and I can be a productive, normal human being. And when I hear people refer to me as he or him or bro or guy or buddy, that reinforces to me that I am passing, and it makes me feel good in my body. It makes me feel seen for who I really am. My audio cut out here, but what I wanted to say was, when I'm not passing, when I'm 100% sure everyone around me is seeing me as a woman and not a man, I feel naked. I truly do feel naked. I feel like I'm walking around naked. Everybody can see me. Everybody knows what I am and who I am, and they're going to treat me as such. And it's not because I'm being perceived as a woman. It's because I'm being perceived as a woman that gives me that uncomfortable feeling. Interactions, in particular with men, are entirely different. I get doors held open for me. I get offered help if I'm carrying something heavy. And that stuff might seem nice. And it's stuff that everybody should be doing for everybody, regardless of their gender. But I know that it's because I appear female. And that is what makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to be seen as a woman. Period. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. That's all that really needs to be said at the end of the day. It's very difficult to put these feelings into words otherwise, because it's very much a non-physical, almost, for some people, completely spiritual feeling. I think humans in general have issues with relating to any condition that takes place in the mind rather than physically on the body. Because unless you've lived through something like this yourself, it is very difficult to put yourself in someone else's headspace and feel what they're feeling in a non-physical way. It's the same with depression or autism or anxiety disorders or anything like that. People who do not have experience with these conditions, they believe that you have full control over your body and therefore you should have control of your thoughts and your emotions as well. But it is so much more difficult than that. To a completely healthy, normal person, a kid with autism just needs to calm down and needs to shape up and learn how to act right. Or someone with depression just has to get out of their own head. It's not that simple, and very often you need outside sources of help for your condition, whether that be therapy or medication, whatever you decide is best for you. Which is why it frustrates me so much that people who not only don't know but don't care about trans people are left up to making decisions on the healthcare of trans people. I am not a political person, and I do not align with a political side whatsoever. I find that shit far too divisive. I give you my opinion and my feelings, and you can put me on the political spectrum if you want, but I will not put myself there. And you will not learn a thing about me or what I support from my political persuasion alone. Therefore, I don't want one. However, conservatives and the right wing in particular on its own have a huge issue with misconstruing and often blatantly lying about trans people and trans healthcare. How many times I have heard chopping up or anything similar when relating to trans people is completely ridiculous. If conservatives or anyone who believes all trans people want to do is chop up their bodies, actually gave the slightest shit about trans people or trans kids, they would do the slightest amount of unbiased research and realize that they are wrong about pretty much everything. And for a party that claims to follow the science, they don't give a shit about the science when it gives credibility to the experience of being trans. But what about being queer? I told you that we would talk about both being trans and queer, so let's get into the queer part. This is much easier to explain for me. A gay man is a man who likes men. A gay woman or lesbian is a woman who likes women. A bisexual person, whether they are male or female, likes both men and women. And a pansexual person likes people regardless of gender. And those last two trip some people up. A lot of people think, well, aren't bisexual and pansexual the same thing then? Now, yes and no. Depending on who you ask, you can get a million interpretations on this one. But here is how I understand it. A bisexual person likes men who present as men and women who present as women. A pansexual person doesn't care regardless, doesn't care what you identify as, they see the person first. I considered myself bisexual until recently, and it really is just a slight change in how I feel, but I do feel like pansexual fits me better now, and let me tell you why. As a bisexual person, I considered myself to like women who displayed feminine characteristics and men who displayed masculine characteristics. And when I went on testosterone and my sex drive went all through the roof, I now consider myself more pansexual because I don't care so much about whether men look like men or whether women look like women. If I am attracted to the person, I'm attracted to the person. That's it. And again, depending on who you ask, you're going to get a completely different answer. I've never gotten a straight, continual answer on that in my years being involved in the LGBT community. LGBT plus community. So that's my interpretation. Take it or leave it. It doesn't make a difference to me. Anyhow, slight sexuality rant aside, what is it like being queer, and what is the result of repressing that sexuality? Now, being bisexual as a Jehovah's Witness was definitely different for me than what being a lesbian woman or a gay man would experience. Because yes, while I had forbidden feelings, if you would, for Sisters in the Hall, I could redirect my attraction to men and would just consider women as outside of my dating pool. This is not to say that all bisexual people feel the way that I feel about it, by the way. And this does not mean that sexual repression does not occur in bisexual people. While it is easier to pass yourself off as straight if you're a bisexual or pansexual Jehovah's Witness, it's still suppressing a part of yourself that you should be free to explore no matter who you are. Hell, sexual repression happens with everyone in this religion, regardless of their sexuality. So imagine what it's like to never have an outlet according to your faith. It is misery-inducing. And not just the fact that you can't ever have sex if you're brainwashed into their way of thinking, but you're not even allowed to love. And heaven forbid you fall in love with someone who you straight up can't be with, whether they love you to or not. I've known multiple peenies and pomos, good friends with some of them, who were madly in love with somebody who was also a Jehovah's Witness. And it eventually got between them and they had to stop seeing each other because the guilt and the fear of upsetting God was far too much. People have given up the person who was the love of their life. If you have ever romantically loved someone, imagine that person, and you're just not allowed to be with them because you share the same genitalia. What's somewhat humorous is the fact that my husband and I, when I'm out and I'm passing and I got my facial hair all nice and grown in, and we walk by Jehovah's Witnesses in their little cart, to them, we're a sinful gay couple, and God is going to smite us one day because we won't break up for their religion. But in reality, physically, we're completely heterosexual, whether I appear as male or not. One day I would just love to go up to a cart when I'm passing really, really well. I want to go up to a cart and ask them, what does your religion say about homosexuality? And I know they're probably not going to be confrontational about it, but if I could somehow get them to admit that my marriage to my husband is not valid, I would love to just be able to say, but I have a vagina. Just to see them scramble for an answer. I really, really want to know what they would do in that situation. Because it's ridiculous. Human sexuality and gender is so diverse, and yet religion and society as an extension have just put sexuality in this box that it's struggling to break free from. And people, particularly the right wing, but some also on the center and on the left, want to get upset about the younger generation putting labels on every little different thing about themselves, when it was our ancestors who insisted on putting label on gender and sexuality to begin with. You want to get upset about somebody going by Zer and defining what that is for them outside of your box, but if a trans man is passing perfectly as a cis male, you still want the world to call him a she, because he still has a vagina. It's constrictive and ridiculous, and it needs to end. Just let people be people. Let people be happy. Let people express themselves the way that they want to express themselves. And why does it bother you so much if somebody is expressing themselves the way that they feel inside? What does it have to do with you? Oh, you want to change the way that I talk. If I were to change my last name because I got married, that's something people have been doing for centuries, would you still be calling me by my old name, by my old last name? Or would you be calling me, oh, no, you are a Cohen now. This is your last name. People change. People change. And how you refer to them has to change as well. That's not up to you. It's not. How you refer to somebody is not up to you. You do not decide what someone's name is. You do not decide what someone's gender is. Shut the fuck up and sit down. Society changes all the time. Why are you being so resistant? The light now becomes ever brighter, right? Jehovah's Witnesses can change the rules all they want, and the rank and file just call it the chariot moving forward. But the world progresses and makes it life a little bit easier for LGBT people to exist, and that's just no good. That's a sign of Satan's control. You're not allowed to have sex with someone if they have the same gender as you, even if you plan to marry them. You're not allowed to marry them in the first place. Can't even love them, because if they love you too, you're eventually going to want to be together regardless of the damn religion, so your only choice is to break up. And while you're enduring the suppression of emotions and sexuality and denying yourself the right to be the person you were born to be, every other Sunday or midweek meeting, you have to listen to Brother Dixon my ass give an uneducated and hateful spiel about how people like you are ruining the planet. And that is the queer experience as a Jehovah's Witness. You are taught very, very deeply to suppress, police, and judge yourself to the point where, for myself, I couldn't even determine what was actually right or wrong when I left the religion. Because everything was wrong. Everything I thought and did was wrong to some extent, in some way. And even now, to this day, I suppress myself. Every word I say, every thought I think, everything I do, I am constantly thinking, how will other people view this? Is this right or is this wrong? Should I be doing more or am I doing too much? Even my thoughts, I have this horrible fear that people around me can read my thoughts and they know what I actually think about them. So I always try to think good thoughts because I have it in my head that Sky Daddy is watching everything I think, and if I have a homosexual thought about somebody, oh, gotta smite you. And I directly blame my personal experience of self-judgment and self-policing on Watchtower's ability to brainwash people into scrutinizing themselves so badly. And it's just sad at this point. I know Watchtower will likely never acknowledge queerness as valid, which, if they did, it would probably really improve their stance among the public, but Watchtower is not interested in proving how they're seen by the public, and they're definitely not interested in making their own members feel safe and loved and included. Nope. They are interested in building shit, selling shit, and making money. They are a business parading as a religion, and it is very plain to see now that the mask has come off for me. And I really have to wonder what percentage of the religion is PMOs, because I feel like it is far more than what we know of for sure. I was never PMO. I was PIMQ for a little bit less than a year, but I pretty much went straight from being PME to POMO for the most part. I could not put up an act for the sake of keeping friends, and I salute anybody who can do it successfully, because you should probably go into acting. But do the leaders know that it's bullshit? It kind of reminds me of when Leah Remini tells the story of how the truth of Scientology was told to her, and when she learned the big secret about the aliens and all that BS, and how at that point she had already dedicated and sacrificed so much of her life to the cult. And I have to wonder if it's sort of the opposite with the governing body, that they all know it's bullshit, but you're only told for sure that it's bullshit once you join them at the top. But once you're up there, you have power, fame, glory, wealth for sure. I'm sure they give themselves a nice paycheck, no doubt about it. And I have to wonder if they realize what they're doing or not, because their actions seem pretty evident in that regard. They want glory and power, and they only want more of it. That's why they're building a freaking film studio right now. Which begs the question, If they did know that it was bullshit, what is stopping them from one day realizing, shit, our numbers are dipping faster than we can keep them up. Time to open up the gates to the homos. So it really must be that they are just a bunch of hateful, bigoted people, and not just hateful and bigoted, but so self-righteous and full of their own bullshit that they really believe that God wants them to have these nice things and build these nice buildings without lifting a finger to help those in need, even in their own congregations. And that's really all I have left to say about it. If you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching. I cannot believe the reach that some of my videos are getting right now. And I know 100 to 300 views is not much compared to people who are making a living off of the platform, but that is a lot to me. 300 views means 300 people thought that what I had to say was important enough to click on this video. And a percentage of you also commented and liked, which meant that what I had to say was important enough to leave a comment or a like. Or at least entertaining enough. And that means the world to me. We are fast approaching 400 subscribers, and I am elated to get to work on that Pillowgate video that I promised. I'm having a lot of trouble right now finding the actual videos themselves without any commentary, but if worst comes to worst, I will either use a video that has commentary and try to draw a script from that, because my goal was to reenact the whole thing. Or if that looks like it's not working out, I can just do a skit inspired by the Pillowgate talks instead, and I'm sure that would be entertaining to some extent. But I don't think anything would be as good as being able to read it off word for word, their own words against them. Either way, I'm sure we'll have a good time. Until next time, amen and amen to my brothers and sisters.